welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Why Retirement Show. Jason, how are we doing? Excited for today's episode.
Yeah, doing good. So we're going to do an introduction to Social Security today. So kind of high level, we kind of talked about we're going to kick off a whole series where we get a little deep dive, different episodes into survivor benefits, spousal benefits, qualifying, and all these other strategies for turning on your Social Security. But today we're just going to stay high level and do a little introduction episode to cover some basic things everybody should know about Social Security. And I think to kick it off, we'll talk a little bit about the history of Social Security, little fun facts kind of stuff. Do you want to kick us off there with a fun fact?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, interesting stuff as we're doing research, right? Getting ready for this show. So Social Security was an Social Security Act was signed by FDR, right? So back in 1935 was when when Social Security Act was signed. And basically, it didn't start paying a benefit till 1937, right?
Right.
And some of the first to note, some of the first collectors, it was just like a lump sum, single type of payment and things like that. But after that, it started to become monthly payments and the like. So, and that started in 1940 was when those monthly payments started to happen. Other big things. So let's bring it to like today, right? So over 67 million people receive a benefit from Social Security of about $1.4 trillion paid annually to as a benefit to people, which is pretty remarkable. And then, kind of like what we'll talk about in future episodes and what's really important about financial planning in general, it's also reported that 40% of Americans rely on Social Security as like their primary income in retirement, which is a big number, obviously. So yeah, those are some of the highlights. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to dig in there a little bit more, but
No, and I think the moral of those facts is that it's a huge program. It's an old program. It's been around. It's a kind of the backbone of the retirement for this country is built around Social Security in a lot of ways. So what Social Security is, most of our listeners probably know this, and I know this is an introduction episode, but Social Security is just you pay into it through taxes. It's a program ran by the government that you pay into throughout your working career. And it's essentially an annuity because once you reach your retirement age, you turn this on. It's between 62 and 70 right now, those ages, and we'll touch on that later. But at that point, you turn it on and you're going to get a monthly benefit. And it's based off of your earnings and what you've kind of in some ways what you've paid in and your earnings. There are ceilings to that, but for the most part, it's based off your earnings. And then included in there are things like disability benefits, spousal benefits if your spouse wasn't working or if they make less than half of what you make in Social Security, and that's for another episode. But also survivor benefits if somebody passes away, your Social Security continues. And it's this really important monthly income that provides a lot of stability for a lot of people later in life. And so with that, Paul, you want to bring us into qualifying for Social Security and just high level what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, qualifying for a benefit, obviously, this isn't like tied to an employer, it's not like it's, related to that, but everybody pays into that. Well, pretty much almost everybody pays into the system. There are a few little carve outs there, but qualifying for it is the minimum is basically for you to have benefit on your own working career or your own working life is 40 quarters or about 10 years of work, right? That's kind of like the beginning threshold where you become eligible. And how that's typically done is, you have a job, maybe, you work at, maybe you get your first job, right? In high school or something like that, working at a restaurant, or maybe working, at a grocery store. Your paycheck, some withholdings, are going towards, Social Security, for your future benefit, right? So every single paycheck you get, you're going to that. Maybe you're self-employed now, or maybe you work for, the government of some sort. You're still, for the most part, in Hawaii, you're paying into those systems through your payroll, or through your self-employed income, right? You're still having to pay into those systems.
Mhm.
And basically, to qualify, in some respects, those are the ways that you would qualify for your own benefit. Now, there are other ways to qualify for other benefits. Like if like Jason mentioned earlier, if you didn't work, or maybe your spouse doesn't have 40 quarters of working, there are other types of benefits that someone could qualify for as a spouse, and things of that nature. But again, some of those things we'll talk about in further episodes, or later episodes, to kind of just go dive deeper on those. But by the most part, qualifying for Social Security, those are kind of the minimum ways to qualify. Any
Sure.
thoughts on
And
that?
if you, yeah, no, and a lot of people don't realize they are paying into it, but when you review your pay stubs, regardless of where you're working, if you look at all those line items for the deductions from your pay stub, somewhere in there you'll see OASDI, old age and survivor disability, or it might show up as something else under some different people. But
Right.
uh, you'll see it on your paycheck, and the reason being is if you work for somebody, your employer will pay half of the required percentage
Yeah.
for you,
Mhm.
and you pick up the other half. If you're self-employed, you got to foot the whole bill
Right.
um, to pay into the system. But no, I like it. That's kind of high level. We'll probably dig into some other ways in which you qualify for Social Security later on.
Perfect.
Um, moving on to the ages. So the earliest you can collect Social Security is 62.
Right.
And the latest, well, I don't want to say the latest, but is 70. If you wait beyond 70, you're kind of capped out, right? That's
Right.
that's when they stop increasing the amount. So the way it works is if you take it early, you're going to get less of an amount, right? And you keep putting it off, you'll get more and more until you reach age 70. And at
Right.
age 70, you're capped off, and that's the maximum that the Social Security is going to give you.
Yep.
Um, typically, full retirement age, you hear that a lot. Full retirement age is age 67. For most people right now, it's 67 years old. And and the reason that's important, full retirement age, is that ties into things like if you're working and collecting Social Security, there's some rules about how much earnings you can have.
Yep.
Um, and a couple other things of why full retirement age is important. But it's important to know 62 is the earliest, 70 is the latest, and it's about an 8% annual increase year over year if you delay. So from age 62, whatever the amount shown on your statement is, if you wait till 63, it's going to be about an 8% increase in the amount that you'll get. Um, and it's paid out in monthly increments. Delaying for a full year, you get the 8%, but you don't have to wait. It doesn't have to be an annual thing. Let's say you wait 6 months, it's going to incrementally increase through the month. So if I decide to pull my Social Security at 63 years old and 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be in between. It's going to be in between 63 and 64 of what it shows on my statement by the 4 month increment kind of step up there. Does that make sense, Paul? Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing to note is, if you don't wait for full retirement age, which again, depending on when you're born, could be 67, or a little bit earlier, you're going to have some things to think about. And there is a reduction in benefit in general, right? So
Mhm.
full retirement age is, like you said, the one that things that most ages people talk about when they think about Social Security. And it's interesting, because when people talk about, like, oh, retirement age, like, this is kind of like that age that they set, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
Social Security starts around 62 or 65, right? It was 65 for a super long time,
Right.
um, or 67. Um, but yeah, this is like one of those pivotal pieces of someone's retirement that, working to this point in time is a really important part. And then, if you can delay it, then, that benefit will, maintain. Um, I think one thing that I want to point out, which I don't see on our notes, so I'm just want to mention it. If someone, is married and happens to pass away, right? And whether it's, early on in retirement or whether it's later in years, a married couple is only allowed to maintain that single benefit in after someone's passing, right? So while they're both living, they both have their own benefits, right? But let's say, husband passed away first, the spouse has to select one benefit, either their benefit or the decedent's benefit, right? So you only can maintain a single benefit. I'm not sure if that's something we're definitely probably going to talk about that in the future, but I didn't see that here, and it's probably one of those things that's important as well.
Yeah, and it's Social Security can be so straightforward and in some ways so complicated. And I think we'll dive into the spousal and survivor benefits in a deep dive episode. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point to consider. You can't collect two
Yeah.
Social Securities if it's you and your spouse and one passes away. You don't get two, you get one.
Yeah.
And that's all important and part of the planning, right? Because you got to think when you select your Social Security, you got to think of how that might impact your spouse, how the health is, of everybody and whatnot.
Correct.
All good points.
Yeah.
I guess one thing we should bring up too is it's important to set up your account, to log
Yeah.
in, go to ssa.gov and set up your account. I know they used to send out the paper statements, the Social Security ones. I don't think they do that anymore, or if they do, it's very infrequent, like once every long while. And it's just good to set up the account. You hear sometimes tragedy stories of scammers or somebody trying to access, the accounts or whatever. But it's just good to log in, make sure everything looks good. You can pull your statements, do some planning for yourself, and it's not very hard to do. So it's a good.
Absolutely. And as someone for myself, like, if you're thinking like, oh wow, that's like 40 years from now or 30 years from now, like I would do it now. I mean, I've done it already,
Sure.
and it's just it's an interesting thing. You can look at your earning records, right? You can make sure that they're accurate, or there might be discrepancies. And it's always good because, like Jason said, they're pretty much pushing everybody to online. I don't know. I know that they don't send out statements for, any reason now. It's like only for specific people, or maybe if they've opted to get that. But yeah, simply going on to ssa.gov, creating an account, you'll see that great information there, and it will talk through different things. So yeah, any last thoughts? Any thoughts on anything as we wrap up Social Security?
No, we'll probably do a deep dive on how Social Security is taxed. It's not taxed at the state level here in Hawaii, but it is taxed federally.
Right.
And how it's taxed is often misunderstood. It's partly taxed, typically 0 to 85%, but not. It's a formula that you got to kind of go through to figure out how much will be taxed depending on your earnings, and that'll be a conversation for a future episode.
Yeah.
But I think where I kind of wanted to leave it off, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, is how Social Security fits in your retirement plan. So when we talked about our state of Hawaii employees and our federal employees, city and county, wherever somebody has a pension, right? We always talk about the three-legged stool,
Right,
of retirement. And just to reiterate real quickly, so you have three legs to your retirement stool. One is going to be your pension, one is your Social Security, and one is made up of your other retirement accounts, whatever that might be: 401k, IRA, 403b, TSP. And being that Social Security is a big part of this retirement plan, one, it's important to understand what is your strategy for collecting.
yeah,
And understanding that this can help kind of solve some of that. All right, how much do I need in retirement to cover my basic, housing, transportation, all this kind of stuff? Social Security, is going to always be there, right? And then you got your pension to kind of add on top of that. And then from there, you can find out if there's a deficit or a surplus. And that's where you can kind of manage the distributions from your other retirement accounts and whatnot. But Social Security, in my opinion, ends up being one of the, pillars to kind of reduce those, transportation, housing expenses, the minimum, lifestyle expenses. It really helps offset that. And factoring that in can allow you to take it a step further and do the other planning with your investment accounts and other retirement accounts. What are your thoughts there?
No, absolutely. I mean, again, when it comes to just, planning in general, something that we're always probably going to talk about on the show is just, kind of estimating. There's no like concrete answers here, but, like based off what we know, based off of our family situation, here are some things that we're going to do. And when should we start Social Security is a really big question. Because the answer is going to be different for a lot of people, right? The answer is not 70, which most people will say like, oh, wait till 70, it's the biggest benefit. But there's so many reasons to start it earlier. Health,
Sure.
just overall need, right? There's so many different reasons why. But anyway, yes, Social Security is a pillar of that three-legged stool. It's pretty much one of the largest benefits that most people get, as we said at the top. And for our listeners who are government employees and things like that, it's just another thing that we pay into in the state of Hawaii and get benefits for. So last thoughts.
No, that's it. Look forward to future episodes. We'll try to build out a series on different topics relating to Social Security. And if you have any questions or anything in particular you want us to talk over, shoot us an email, aloha@hawaiiretirementshow.com. And I guess we'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Awesome. Have a great day.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting their financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta, Paul McWilliams, and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial or Inspire Advisors. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration. And for Paul McWilliams, investment advisory services are offered through Inspire Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC.